Voting has been taking place in Namibia today in what could be the most competitive election since independence from white-ruled South Africa 34 years ago. The governing Southwest People's Organization, known as SWAPO, is fielding its first female presidential candidate, Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwah, to succeed Hage Geingob, who died in February.
Through voting, you are making your voice to be heard, that will have an impact for the next 5 years in your life and in the life of every Namibian and any person who's visiting this country. So please come out in your numbers and cast your votes.
We are all here today because we want our voices to be heard. We want to exercise our democratic rights. So we can't come later on with complaints regarding youth politics, regarding national politics if we don't vote today. So we have to vote today for the change that we want to see tomorrow.
Well, for more on that election in Namibia, I'm joined now in the studio by Professor Tunde Esan, Professor of International Relations, with a focus on the history of African elections and democratic developments on the continent and beyond. Prof, good to see you again.
It's good to see you, Charles.
At times like this, you're absolutely indispensable. So I do have to thank you for taking the time to come in.
We try to be as much as possible.
Well, we appreciate that. What are you hearing about how the voting has been going today? All ship-shape and seaworthy, turnout good, everything peaceful?
Yeah, the turnout is good when you look at it very well. You know, a lot of people want to vote. Just like many other countries, not only in Southern Africa, in West Africa, in North Africa, and everywhere. You know, the younger generation are looking forward to a new beginning, a change, as it were. There are a lot of people, more than 40% of voters are voting for the first time. I mean, more than 30%.
They're very young people.
They're very young people voting for the first time in about after 5 years after 2019 election. So it's going on very well.
Right.
The voting started at 6 a.m. and it's going to end 9 p.m.
Local time. Right. And it's not the, I mean, you were making the point that everybody wants to vote. Yeah. I suppose the issue is not whether they want to vote. The issue is in places where they come out to vote, whether their votes will count.
The vote will count.
No, I'm not talking about Namibia. I'm talking about generally, because you talked about West Africa, North Africa, all the rest of it.
Yeah, I agree with you, you know, but in Southern Africa, the precedents have been, you know, like in
good
Botswana,
precedents have been
good
set,
precedents,
right.
as it were. We've been set in Southern Africa, Botswana, we saw what happened, you understand, where an incumbent president lost, you understand? And of course, the elections in South Africa in June was a good one. Mauritius, we saw a good example. So the tendencies are there that we may have another very credible election. I think we will.
So why is this election in Namibia considered to be the most competitive since independence from white-ruled South Africa, which was 34 years ago?
You're talking about from March 1990, when they gained independence from South Africa. It is very important and very interesting because, like I said, a substantial number of voters they don't know what happened when SWAPO came in, you understand, Southwest People's Organization, as it were, and they don't know much about it. They are proud young people from under the age of 35, and a large number of them are voting for the first time. And if you look at the tendencies, in 2014, SWAPO got 84% of the votes, you understand, beating almost everybody, unrivaled. In 2019, they got only 56% of the votes, you understand, followed closely by Itula, you know, a very, very vibrant, you know, up and doing dentist, who got about almost 26% of the votes. And of course, that tells you something, that if there is a change, I mean, a gradual, you know, a change in the pendulum between 2014 and 2019, the hopes are high, particularly by the opposition. Maybe they can even do much better this time
But
around.
what is it that's been responsible for that change? Because SWAPO, which has been in power since independence, appears to be eroding its support. or losing support? I mean, the support is
normal.
eroding. I understand there's been a lot of corruption,
Yes,
there's greater unemployment, there are economic problems, that kind of thing.
Yes, it's everywhere, you understand. That's a very, you know, when you almost substantial number of youths are unemployed, and I think that's one of the emphasis of the candidate of SWAPO herself, you understand, Idatwa, who said that the major issue in this election is unemployment and making people gainful employment, particularly the younger generation.
Well, it's interesting that she's saying that when she's a member of the party that's been there since independence.
Yes.
I mean, people hold them responsible for the unemployment.
But a large number of Namibians think that she's not corrupt, that she's a lot better by the mainstream political
yes, I was actually going to ask you about her, Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwah.
Yeah.
She's seeking to become Namibia's first female president.
Yeah.
But she is up against a traditional male-dominated political system, isn't she?
But most people don't know this, that in Namibia, literally half of the members of parliament are women.
Right.
You know, you may now have studied it, you know, just like what we see in, we are almost 30% of members of parliament in Rwanda are women.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that a woman is going to be president.
It doesn't really matter, you know, it doesn't mean that a woman is going to be, of course, in a male-dominated society, you understand, with African thoughts and thinking and traditions, and of course, antecedents. That would be a tough battle, but it is not impossible, as it were.
I mean, I certainly hope that the country moves forward in that direction, because I mean, it's important that that the right people get the right jobs, and it doesn't matter whether it's a woman or a man. But as you said, she is beyond, you know, whether she's a woman or not.
Beyond whether she's a
trusted leader, and she's served in high government office for the last 25 years.
Yes, she was a member of the parliament. In 1990, she was based in UK, came home, hard fighting woman, you know, part of the independence movement. And that is why, before the death of the former president, that he specifically said, look, anointed her to be a successor when the next election comes. That's why she came up in the first place.
Right.
So the woman issue was not in consideration. It was competence and her antecedents. I think that might end up playing out in this election.
Well, I hope it certainly hope it does, because that's what everybody would want. But what about the opposition? How much of a force are they? Can they dislodge SWAPO?
Yes. Like I said, Itula, for example, who is the independent patriot guy, you know, an hard-fighting dentist who came up strongly in 2019, is still there, you understand, fighting. And of course, another interesting personality is Barnardos, Swag Boy, who leads Landless People's Party, you understand. That's very interesting, you know.
The title alone
the title alone, the Landless People's Party. They say, look, there must be a change from the distribution of land that happened particularly before the Second World War.
That's always been an issue in Southern Africa.
It's been an issue in Southern Africa, where, you know, that there must be a change and redistribution of land, and of course, so those are very young people, you know. I think that guy is about 47 years, so it's quite interesting seeing a younger generation looking at history and seeing what they can do in order to bring about change, you know. So that's
so the opposition has one main front runner, is it?
Yeah, there are two of them, as it were, because don't forget that we have 96 members of parliament to be elected, and whoever gets the majority actually goes a long way. So you are talking about, and of course, 15 presidential candidates and 21 political parties. But we have about 3 or 4, Itula, Swan Boy, you know, the Barnardos and all that. So it's not you know, an easy thing. It won't be an easy thing for SWAPO, as it were.
And in terms of background, Namibia is a very small country, isn't it? And the population is sparse, only about 3 million.
Yeah, it's a very small country, you know, one of the smallest and with the biggest landmass in Africa, you understand. They have about the least number of people per square kilometers. They have about 887,000 square kilometers of land, peopled and, you know, populated by about 3 million people, as it were, and about 50% of them are younger generation under the age of 40, as it were. So, but it is not really bad, as it were, because there is a thriving tourism industry in that country, and the economy might be on the average, but it is not really bad for a small country as it were in terms of population.
And they were ruled by South Africa,
yes,
weren't they? Which is quite extraordinary, really, because I mean we're kind of used to in Africa having people, foreigners coming in to rule the country, although it was white rule at the time.
Yes, as it were. It's very interesting. After the First World War, you understand, and the Second World War, the tendency, the tendencies at that time is that where do you put, because that was a German, that's one or two German colonies in Africa.
Yes, it
People,
was.
you know,
yeah.
it was
Originally
a German colony, you understand. So after the Second War, particularly after the First World War, of course, it started that, look, the Afrikaners in South Africa were making forays, particularly looking at the antecedents of land distribution that favor the whites. And many of them are literally Africans, you understand? Just like the Boers in South Africa.
Afrikaans.
So it is Africans. And of course, when you look at the geography of Namibia, you understand, east and southern part of the share border with a large, east and southern border with South Africa. So they have always been looming large on that big country in terms of land mass, but small people. So it is only a natural thing that, look, what are we going to do with this land? You understand? And of course, their neighbor, who are equally very well aligned to the superpowers of that era, particularly post-Second World War. You understand? Europe and America, as it were, became an automatic benefactor of what could have been a German colony.
Sure. So when can we expect results to come in?
By tomorrow morning, we should be thinking about the results.
Okay, so we may have to ask you to come in again tomorrow night, if you don't mind. Because, I mean, it's one thing to tell us all these things. It's quite another when the results come out, We look, well, where's Professor Esan? He's not around. But thank you very much. We really appreciate your assessment. Professor Tunde Esan is a professor of international relations with a focus on the history of African elections and democratic developments on the continent.